Hello, everybody. This is Ann McElhinney.
And I'm Phelim here.
And this is the Ann Phelim Scoop. How is everyone?
Good. I'm good. Well, actually,
you're not good, Phelim. There's no point saying that you're good.
I am ill.
Phelim is ill, yeah.
Really?
You see, what happened was Phelim went to San Francisco where they have medieval diseases, and he's come back with something.
I went to San Francisco. They actually do have typhoid and cholera. By the way, they have typhoid and cholera in Los Angeles too.
We didn't even need to go to San Francisco to get the medieval diseases.
Yes, and then worked rather hard up there out covering the David Daleiden trial.
Which brings up the fact that actually we're going to have David Daleiden on the show today and so he'll be in the second half of the show.
Yes.
We're very lucky that David has made time to come and talk to us today because obviously he's had very traumatic 6-8 weeks up in San Francisco.
Basically, he said to me, he's basically devoted the last year to this court case.
Yeah.
He's done nothing else, and so he's, we're very lucky to get him because, in fact, he said, I'm not sure I can go. I have so many things to catch up with because I basically spent the last year in this court case.
He's been living out of a suitcase.
I was there for a lot of the court case, and I think, to me, it wasn't a surprising verdict because of the way the judge forced the jury to make a verdict. The judge, David, actually was more optimistic. We'll talk about that
when David's here.
But the judge, this is so. Just to give you background, David Daleiden, undercover videos, Planned Parenthood, selling the body parts, haggling over selling body parts, eating salad and drinking wine.
Talking about Lamborghinis that you can make. You can get a Lamborghini if you make enough money selling baby parts.
And you can, it's so. Stunning videos, amazing undercover journalism, and this judgment is basically it has declared undercover journalism illegal. Not so much illegal, but it has a price tag now that no one can afford. So, David, I think the total is around $2 million. You've seen other figures, but the 870 is the punitive damages. There's other cumulative, for trespass and that is.
And I suppose the legal costs. Who's bearing the brunt of the legal costs? Obviously, David's going to have to pay for his own legal costs at the moment. Yeah. But of course, he will. They will appeal. There's no way.
They're going to appeal. They're going to appeal because, if you look at what the judge told the jury in advance, the judge said this is not. There's no First Amendment defense for what David Daleiden did, and it's like.
It's nonsense.
Journalism, this is classic journalism.
Well, 2020 did this in 2000. 2020 did exactly the same thing. So ABC's 2020 team did an undercover sting on the selling of baby parts, exactly the same thing that was done. Excuse me now. Yeah. Sorry. Cat doing something disgusting. We're talking here. So 2020 did exactly the same thing, and 2020 haven't, received any kind of punishment or weren't sued in the same way. Yeah. So this is ludicrous.
Yeah, and also, when you think about all those people who go undercover to go to meat factories to show animals being mistreated, even I was reading recently a woman. It was a different story, but she'd went undercover and worked in an Amazon fulfillment center for 6 months, to find out the slave conditions that were there. And let's just say if she'd done that story and Amazon's share price had declined 5%, right, from her exposures. That would be, something like 3 billion or 6 billion for Amazon's share price. She would be liable for that 3 billion. That's 6 billion. So hasn't made undercover journalism illegal, but it comes with a mighty price tag. And undercover journalism on Planned Parenthood comes with a $2 million price tag. I mean, the judge even told the jury that they must find that he committed trespass.
Oh, yeah. In advance of the jury withdrawing, he actually said to them, he gave them that instruction that, he said, don't bother deliberating on that because actually I've made a decision. You have only one possible answer here, and that is that he is guilty of trespass. But we're going to hear more from David.
Yes, we're going to talk to David
in the second half. So we're going to be talking to David. But actually, a very funny thing that happened this week, I think it's very funny. Phelim, you found a photograph of Danny DeVito and Mark Ruffalo. And it's just hilarious, just to show how, disconnected people in Hollywood are from reality. So you have Danny DeVito, and we're showing the photograph right now up on the screen here.
You can see it on YouTube. You can.
Danny DeVito standing beside his dear friend, Mark Ruffalo, and Mark Ruffalo is saying happy birthday or whatever. And the two of them, So he's saying, happy birthday, just take it in, happy birthday. And they're both wearing Planned Parenthood T-shirts.
I stand with
Planned Parenthood. And as a lot of people, so we put this up on Facebook. How many people have commented so far?
Over 1,000. It's one of the most popular posts we've ever put on the Gosnell Movie Facebook page.
And basically, most people are saying on the Gosnell Movie Facebook page, most people are saying basically, luckily, Mark Ruffalo and Danny DeVito's mothers didn't stand with Planned Parenthood and actually decided to have those people. But and then the fact that they're celebrating someone's birthday. Yes. And they're wearing...
But have a look at the photograph.
The photograph is just
Danny DeVito looks like he doesn't know if he should be there or not. And Mark Ruffalo looks like he smoked too much dope or something. It's just that pandering. Like, it's just that...
Yeah, it's very funny. It's very funny. But as I said, the whole issue of abortion anyway, we'll be talking a lot more about that with David when he gets here.
Yes.
As everyone knows, there's been an awful lot in the news about the impeachment.
Peach him.
We're just... Peach him. We were just trying to work out earlier, half the people... I think there's a certain large population of people who aren't watching anything to do with the impeachment because...
That's me.
Ann Phelim is in that group.
I apologise to the viewers and listeners of the Ann Phelim Scoop. I know I should be watching the impeachment and I should be telling you and I should be giving you analysis, but sorry, the Congress and the media, these are the same people who for 2 years told us that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia to swing the election, to subvert democracy, etc., etc. And to be honest, it's not so much I believed them, I thought, well,
there might be something
there.
Maybe there could be something there.
And there's nothing there. There was nothing.
There was no there there.
There was no there. Like, it was 2 years of wasted journalism, congressional investigations. And you know what? I just can't take you seriously.
And you can't take, in fairness, you can't take Adam Schiff very seriously. I don't know anyway, we won't make jokes about people's appearance, but seriously.
Don't go on ahead.
What's wrong with his eyes? That's a very odd look he's got going on there. But I've watched a little bit of it. And I think a lot of us agree that Elise Stefanik is like a complete standout rock star. Where did she come out of? I certainly wasn't aware of her prior to this. But she should be paid
$50,000 a month.
She should get $50,000 a month. But one of the things, obviously, that's coming out over and over again, and that the Republicans are being really good about pointing out, is this, extraordinary fact about Hunter Biden, having a father who was the vice president of the United States. And during a time when there was some questioning over a prosecutor in Ukraine, his son managed to get a job. Just knock me down with a feather. They went and did a worldwide search, an executive search, to find someone to be on their board of Burisma over there in Ukraine. And my God, would you shock her? Just how unusual is that the only candidate they could find for this job was Hunter Biden, the son of the Vice President of the United States, who just happened to be and Burisma happened to be in a bit of hot water, which the Vice President helpfully helped them to get out of.
Yes, it's amazing. Hunter Biden, is there any evidence he ever went to Ukraine?
I'd say now he made the odd trip, but the truth is, he had a very, very nice job. As I said, I would do anything to have a job.
I suppose like that executive search that they did is very much like the executive search that NBC did for a reporter, and they found the only candidate suitable was Chelsea Clinton.
Indeed. The well-known journalist, Chelsea Clinton. The
Listen,
well-known...
I certainly...
And by the way, there's a bit of that all over the place. Meghan McCain managed to get herself a very nice job.
Yes, that was ABC or something. Actually, she's on The View now. At least that's a political role, So... Yes, so I promise I will try and watch more of the impeachment. Maybe I won't, though. I don't know. What?
So we're just... Another couple of things that have happened recently. I just think this is really funny. So I don't know many of you know Nextdoor. So I have a little bit of an obsession. Magda's going to laugh now. But I have a little bit of an obsession with Nextdoor, which is an app on a smartphone, which allows you, if you put in your zip code, it basically connects you with your neighbours. And particularly for people living in urban environments where you mightn't know your neighbours, it's really handy because then you can go on it and something happens and, you hear a noise or something and you can go on Nextdoor and someone will say, oh, I know what happened, a car backfired or whatever. Anyway, I'm on it and I kind of like it. And obviously, one of the biggest topics on Nextdoor, particularly here where we're living in
Venice, California,
is about homelessness. Like, it's dominated, and we're going to do a whole show on homelessness because it's a massive, massive story. But what's really interesting is you can imagine the politics of people in Venice. It's quite curious. I think you say that thing, Phelim, where people are very conservative about a thing they know.
Yeah, it's some political philosopher said it, and so you're most conservative about the subject you know
about
best.
The subject you know. So if you're living in a gated community somewhere, you might have very, very kind and caring attitude to the homeless. If you're living here in Venice,
on a street
where someone is, defecating or masturbating in front of your 3-year-old, you're going to have a slightly different attitude. And excuse me for saying that, but this is the stuff that I'm reading on Nextdoor. So anyway, the Washington Post, by the way, not exactly the most conservative newspaper in America, yesterday had a headline, had a story. Trump administration ousts top homelessness official as White House prepares a broad crackdown. So that basically Donald Trump was here in California and has decided to do something about the homelessness crisis. So I just put up on Nextdoor, I put the story up. I didn't make a comment, nothing like that. I just put the story up. And then someone wrote to me in a private message on the Nextdoor app and said, they've taken down your story. And I thought, so then I looked at my emails and I got this email. Hello, Anne. A message you posted was reported and removed for violating Nextdoor's community guidelines. Don't use Nextdoor as a soapbox. If you have concerns about why your content was reported or removed, do not post about it, whatever. And on and on and on and on. I didn't say anything.
You didn't add a quote. You didn't add a quote.
By the way, better of all, I think, best of all is the story I posted is from the Washington Post.
Yeah.
So I then went, and according to Nextdoor, you're not allowed to complain on Nextdoor, and I actually forgot that. So I did complain on Nextdoor, and lo and behold, about 2 hours later, my story went back up and I've got a ton of comments on it now. But it's very interesting what obviously happened. And it's just interesting, you know, when you think about the tech world, you think about what's going up in San Francisco. Some young person saw the word Trump. And I will bet you that Trump is probably some kind of word that they search, that they have. And if it comes up, it's like, take it down, take it down, take it down. And it's kind of, I was amused, but you know what? It's a little bit of a worry. I posted a news story. I made no comment, and they said, "Get off your soapbox" to me. I mean, it's pretty aggressive stuff. Yeah. So, but yeah, but we will be quoting. I'll be quoting to you from Nextdoor because it's an incredible source for news for what's going on around here with this homeless crisis, and it is a crisis. You know, we have people. There are naked people around here. There are people who are living on the streets, who are living in tents, who are defecating on the streets, and all the rest of it.
And stealing everything they can.
Yeah, the really big thing around here, by the way, just where we live, and it's extraordinary, is you drive around here, you walk around here, you'll see a homeless encampment, and all in front of it you will see
high range bikes,
really, really high level, high expensive bikes, like $15,000.
All of them painted,
all of them broken up for scrap and them being sold on. And I just think, I'd be very happy. I've got a bike. I'd be incredibly happy if the cops stopped me and said, "Prove to me that you own that bike." And I think they need to do that. I think people need to be
but there's a massive amount of petty theft, drug use. As there is typhoid and cholera in Los Angeles, and it's very funny. Like Eric Garcetti, the mayor of Los Angeles, can you believe he actually seriously flirted with the idea of running for president? It's like
people are delusional.
Delusional.
By the way, no one's ever heard of him.
But he's managed to make his city have medieval diseases.
Correct. Yeah.
Back 500 years.
That's right.
That's what we're going to get for America is medieval diseases.
It's quite funny in the conversation on Nextdoor. So I actually wrote, as I said, I wrote and complained and said, "This is ridiculous. I just put up a Washington Post story and I'm getting all this abuse." And I didn't get involved in the thing. I thought, let's see what people say. And someone wrote, I mean, it's really funny. I should go through all the things people said, but one of the guys somebody wrote and said something like, "Well, all this trouble started since Trump became president." And I'm like, are you kidding me? But loads of people piled in on that guy and said, no. Look, everything here in California is run by the Democrats. Every last part of it is run by the Democrats. It needs to be said
why there's homeless, and it's not because of
the recession.
Not because
the rents are high.
And it's not because of the recession. It's not because of rents. It's because they settled a court case that you cannot remove. The ACLU took a court case saying it's against the human rights to remove homeless people's tents and belongings from the sidewalk. And the city, rather than fight this, settled a court case, and then that allowed people to. And then they brought in a law that any theft under $1,000 wasn't a crime; it was a misdemeanor. You got a ticket for it. So, talk about setting up a stall, saying, "Come to California, you'll get all the benefits. You don't have to. You can be homeless for as long as you want, anywhere you want, and you can commit as much petty crime, not so much petty either, $1,000 as you want, and you will not be prosecuted." It is a magnet for every criminal, every person who wants to live beyond the law, beyond the rules, and there are many of them. It's got great weather, so that is why we have these medieval conditions in Los Angeles and in San Francisco. And don't let anyone tell you it's because of the increase in rents or anything
and it's
like
ludicrous. This idea, I mean, when you drive and as I said, walk and drive around here, and you look at the people. These are people who are not, didn't lose their home because of the high rents.
Yeah, they weren't a CEO, and they weren't a CEO of a startup in 2007.
That's right.
Bust.
They weren't working in Snapchat and just can't afford the rent. No. What happened to them? What happened to them is that they have either a very serious mental illness, or they are drug addicts,
or they're
criminals, or they don't want to live by anybody's civilized rules, like not trashing places and not getting drunk all the time and not taking drugs all the time. And but it's very, very interesting, the media, and we're going to do a whole analysis about this because it is really, really shocking. You look at the media reports about this homeless issue here. Every one of them leads off with this idea of the high rents. And by the way, and then the other side of this that also drives me nuts is the solutions that they are coming up with, the solutions to this homeless crisis that they're coming up with, is to build, and I mean, honestly, for those of you listening that are not here in California, you will really take this in. Their solution is to build housing 1 block or on the beach at a price of $750,000 per unit. That's their solution. I mean, you're over there, all over the country, in this country, and I know because I watch that HGTV. I love those property. People can buy a house in Alabama for $150,000, for $120,000, a full home. You don't need to live 1 block off the beach in California to have a home. So, but this is what they're doing. This is how completely deluded and unhinged Democrats are here. That they wouldn't even think about
When you think about it, you're going to build 200 units, 500 units here. For the same money, if you went 10 miles inland, 20 miles inland, still Los Angeles, you could build thousands of these units.
Exactly. We're running out of time because we're about to ask David to join us. And I just want to say, a couple of things I want to say. One, I want to make a quick recommendation for something to watch because we kind of neglected our recommendations of movies and documentaries to watch. And one of the recommendations we'd like to make actually in terms of viewing of either a movie or a documentary or a TV show that we'd really recommend, highly recommend the documentary Psalm, which was made back in, I think it's 2013, and you can get it on Amazon. You can get it, you can rent it for like $2.50 or something like that.
You have this plant, for thousands and thousands of years. I mean, people have been dedicating their life to make something amazing out of it.
It is living art, and you can't appreciate it until you consume it.
It's a lot more than just grape juice.
It's a drug, really.
So it's one of those kind of really fascinating things that you would never think of kind of knowing so much about. Like, so, you might fancy yourself as knowing a lot about wine. These are people who are doing the exam to be master sommeliers, and there's like 150 of them in the whole planet Earth. That's how technical it is. And you watch in the documentary 4 or 5 guys who are preparing for the exam. And it is just fascinating. I couldn't recommend it more. It's just extraordinary what people go through to become these master sommeliers. And it's super entertaining. It's unbelievable.
It's amazing. So they have to know the wine. It's just a blind test.
So they do it in the end. How the exam eventually ends up is they'll walk into a room and they'll get 3 whites and 3 reds, and they'll be put in front of them, and they walk in and they'll have to say the year, the grape. They'll have to say the region. And when I say region, it's right down to like the village. And the guys who are good at this will literally be able to say a south-facing hillside. It is unbelievable. And then they do this thing where they do these tasting notes, and they come out like with this incredibly fluent rush of words that are really evocative of what they've tasted. And I have a relative who actually is just one below a master sommelier, and she's been doing these exams. It's absolutely fascinating. And by the way, once you've seen Psalm, you'll probably want to watch a few of the others. But if you want to watch something delightful about something that you've never heard about before, I'd highly recommend it. It's really, really cool. By the way, just for those of you who, I know some people had written about the red pepper soup recipe, we have the red pepper soup recipe, which I had mislaid. We have it now up on the site, and I think
which site is that on?
On the Facebook. It's on the Facebook and it's on Instagram at the AP Scoop, and also I make quite a number of changes to that recipe. So I don't do the peppercorns most of the time because I think it makes it just a little bit too hot for people. And I don't do the cream because it doesn't need it. But the full recipe is up for those people who were asking for it, because somebody complained that my recipes are a little bit too much of throw in a bit of this and throw in a bit of that. And I have to say, back in the day when I wasn't able to cook, I really hated people who had recipes where fling in a glug of that. And you're thinking, a glug? Exactly how much is in a glug? So yes, those are the recommendations. And we're hoping at the end of the show today, when we're with David, to do to make some Irish coffee. This is going to be the challenge today.
Oh, we're going to make Irish coffee?
We're going to try and make Irish coffee. The whole thing with the Irish coffee, by the way, literally the only thing that you really need to focus on and worry about is to get the pouring cream to the right consistency, that it floats on the top and it doesn't, so that it ends up, your Irish coffee ends up
I'm
looking
not
like a
getting
Guinness.
involved. Let's just...
We're going to do this.
Okay, let's get David on the show now. Let's talk to David Daleiden.
Yeah, we're looking forward to this. So we're now joined by our dear friend, David Daleiden.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much, David.
Hello.
I want to tell two stories about you, David.
Oh boy. Two.
Just two. Just two to get going. But we've been friends for a while, and
Quite a while.
you know, I go on the road with the Gosnell movie, and David and I end up in the same spots, and have had some very nice glasses of wine in many parts of the country, and hope to do more of that in the future. But I have a funny story about you, and then I'm going to talk a bit more seriously. But one of the stories, and it's just a poignant one, was we invited you to a party. We invited David to a party in our house. I always get very emotional talking about David, and I sat on the couch and you were sitting beside me, and this woman, a friend of ours, I won't say her name to embarrass her, she was sitting there, and I sort of realised, oh, she didn't know who David was, right? And I said to her, oh, this is actually David Daleiden, you know. This is David Daleiden from the Undercover Baby Parts videos. And she burst into tears. Do you remember that? And she burst into tears
every so often.
And she said basically that she had shown the videos to her daughter, and that it had a very significant thing. I was thinking yesterday, I came back on a flight from Arizona. I was thinking about you and thinking about how to introduce you, and I was crying on the plane writing the introduction to you.
Gosh.
So I don't know how well this is going to go. Hopefully I'll have had the tears all done with me now. But you know, you meet people, you meet a lot of people in life. Not many people meet somebody as significant as David. And what you've done, David, and how you've changed the whole world. And people will look back in the future, and you'll be looked at like the same people who ended slavery, is how you will be remembered, actually, David. And one of the stories I love to tell about David is, because we were on the road a bit together, and I remember being somewhere with you, and it struck me, how did you do it? You know, how did this guy do this? How was he in a room in these places? And particularly, I think when you were in Houston, I think it was in Houston.
Yeah.
Where, you know, David's there, Sandra is there. These are, you know, incredible people, and Sandra obviously extraordinary as well. And they're in this room in Planned Parenthood in the massive Houston operation, which looks like it looks like a
giant cash register.
It looks like a giant cash register, and it's this huge building. And David's in there, and I'm going to stop talking in a second. And David's in there, and in the background, they are dividing out a little baby into pieces and saying, we got an arm here, and this is a good-looking heart and stuff, and a good liver and stuff. And they're speaking. And in the background, you can hear David keeping his cool and asking them questions and making them say what they're doing and explaining what they're doing. And Sandra is there. And I remember saying to you and asking you, how did you do that? How could you be there? How did you do that? How could you be there and keep it together? And you said, memorably, and I tell the whole country this, everywhere I go, I tell this story, that you said that there was no one else there to witness that they ever lived, that these children ever lived, and that you were privileged and felt the responsibility, and you were really grateful to be the person who got to do this and tell this story. This is who is with us today, David Daleiden. We're so proud to know you. We just love you, David, and we're so sorry about last week. You'll have to take over now, Phelim. I know I need a moment.
Okay.
So David, for those who don't know, David's the guy who did the undercover investigation into the Planned Parenthood sale of body parts, and haggling over body parts, and negotiating over body parts, and profiting from the sale of body parts. And also they were quite open that they would change medical procedures for better, more profitable specimens. Basically, it's a massive criminal conspiracy. And David exposed all that. So the reward for that, of course, was that he ended up in court being sued by Planned Parenthood for damages from exposing this. and for trespass and for RICO conspiracy and fraud. And last week, the jury had a verdict of around $2 million.
Nearly $2.3 million is the total jury verdict.
Yeah. Why do you think you produce such stunning evidence and such stunning videos? Why do you think the jury came up with that?
At the end of the day, I think there's one reason, and that reason is Judge William Orrick III, who he is well known for founding and funding a clinic for Planned Parenthood of Northern California before he was on the federal bench. And Planned Parenthood of Northern California is one of the 11 Planned Parenthood entities that was suing us in his courtroom in this case. And you can look at many decisions that Judge Orrick made throughout the course of the trial and really throughout the course of the lawsuit that were directly to benefit and protect Planned Parenthood in Northern California. Yeah. Of course, I mean, he's probably the only judge in San Francisco who still has ongoing legal obligations to the plaintiffs in this case. So, we tried very hard to get him recognized as disqualified from sitting in judgment over this case. And unfortunately, there apparently was not the institutional will among the federal judiciary to hold him accountable among his peers. So I think the responsibility for how the jury was, how Planned Parenthood was able to extract this kind of verdict from the jury is that responsibility is solely at Judge Orrick's feet. He predetermined several core issues in the case before sending it to the jury.
For example, he predetermined that you did commit trespass, and it was written in the jury document. It was, it has been decided that David and his colleagues committed trespass. What damages do you think are applicable for that trespass? And of course, a jury looking at that isn't going to say zero. If the judge says, if the court says you committed trespass, and then, I think the biggest prejudgment that has incredible consequences going forward was the statement in the summing up that there's no First Amendment defense to what you did. And it's like, how can you, that won't even stand, even in the Ninth Circuit of San Francisco appeals court, that will never stand. That cannot stand. There's no case, in my opinion, that has a more valid First Amendment defense than yours. It's effectively declaring undercover journalism dead in America if this case stands. There's no difference between what you did and the PETA people going undercover in animal factories and to battery hens.
But there's no difference between what David did and what ABC 2020 did, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely no difference.
And there's a famous in Chicago, I think it was in the 70s, a newspaper took over a bar and ran the bar for a year to expose all the corruption from city officials, right? So they had people coming in taking bribes for health certificates. That's gone. It's not gone because as long as you're prepared to pay for the damages. I read a book recently where a lady went undercover into Amazon to expose their practices, the fulfillment centers, right? And she was there for 6 months. Imagine, I've seen this earlier.
Sounds like a gross RICO fraud scheme.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And I thought it was amazing when Dave, and we're going to talk a bit about the case, but we want to talk about other stuff as well and how David started in the movement, in getting involved in this cause in the first place. But one of the things I thought was amazing at the very beginning of the case, where they laid out, so you didn't give people your name, and they did this whole thing where it was like, yes, it's called undercover, and you didn't walk into the Planned Parenthood in Houston and say to them, oh, by the way, I'm here to expose the fact that you're selling baby parts, and they were like questioning this, and I felt like when they did that and they laid it all out, they laid it out in meticulous detail, I was sort of sitting in the court thinking, and this is of course typical me, I felt like standing up and starting to applaud and going, yes, David, this is exactly this is prize-winning, Pulitzer Prize-winning stuff. If it was about animal cruelty, by the way. If it was to do with the sale of animal parts, you would totally be getting a Pulitzer Prize for the undercover work you did.
People go undercover to expose, that thing, to catch a predator. They go undercover to catch child predators.
Yeah, exactly. And of course they don't use their proper name, and of course they use false IDs, and of course they,
these people, the great journalism damages people. Great journalism damages villains. So this is a villain's charter. This is a charter for illegality, a charter for you cannot be touched now. Or if you, for example, if Amazon had lost billions of dollars in their share price, the journalists are liable. You're liable for the damage to your great journalism. The better your journalism, the bigger the bill.
So here's the question. Just to bring everyone up to speed, because obviously this has just recently happened. Where do we go from here, David? And then I want to go back to the origin of this.
Yeah. So absolutely, we're going to appeal this incredibly unjust, rigged verdict from a biased judge in a biased courtroom as soon as possible. I mean, there is going to be we're almost to the holiday season here, and there's a lot of just various post-trial briefing and other things that kind of have to happen first before the verdict is actually completely final. But as soon as it is, we're going straight to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, because as you say, what this San Francisco judge and San Francisco jury has basically decided is that undercover journalism is now banned as fraud on a federal level in our country. Mm-hmm. So it is a grievous assault on CMP's undercover work for sure, and my undercover work, but it's also an attack on the First Amendment civil rights of all Americans and all Californians, both to do citizen journalism and investigative reporting and undercover reporting, and also to consume it as a critical part of the public discourse in our country. And that's what the San Francisco, California political establishment has now decided that is too threatening for the citizens of this country to be allowed to have access to.
Can I go back and I want to ask a couple of questions that I think would be really interesting for people to listen to, and I'm interested in the answers to myself. And we have talked about this stuff before, but you were on the road a long time with Sandra, sometimes on your own, in incredible places with incredible people saying incredible things.
We had a team of a total of actually 6 different undercover actors, including myself. So there was we definitely had sort of a traveling road show.
If this doesn't sound too what for you was like the most extraordinary moment of all of that? Because for me it was that moment I'm talking about in Houston. But I'm just wondering what was the moment where you, I don't know, can you share a moment with us that was extraordinary to you about the depths of the worst, of the depravity of humanity?
There were several really incredible moments throughout the course of the undercover work. Certainly one of the big ones, one of the ones that is, as you mentioned, the moments where we were actually interacting with freshly aborted children, with the remains of children who had just been killed by abortion, both in Denver at the Planned Parenthood or the Rocky Mountains Mega Center in Denver, and then also at the Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast Mega Center in Houston. Those are probably the darkest moments, with also the most kind of poignant sort of humanity, because no matter what, you can't erase the commonality that we share with those kids who were killed those 2 days. Some of the, on sort of maybe a lighter note, or maybe a more hopeful note, or just a less traumatic note, it was always really significant. There were a couple of different moments where we were interacting very closely with abortion providers, with like veteran Planned Parenthood abortion providers, Dr. Nicotola being one, Dr. Mary Gatter, some of these very famous ones, others whose videos haven't come out yet, like Dr. Ann Phelim Scoop from Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast and others, but there was a substantial number of Planned Parenthood abortion providers, late-term Planned Parenthood abortion providers, who will do abortions up to 6 months for any reason. And we would be having these very graphic conversations with them about, these are the different body parts we need. We need brains, we need livers, we need lungs, we need this and that. Mm-hmm. And they're describing how they do their dismemberment procedures with the forceps and what kind of changes they might make to make sure that the fetus and that the body parts are kept more intact for us. And some of these providers, Dr. Nicotola is the first one, and there were others besides her. When they would start to talk about the baby specifically as a physical entity, and they would talk about some of the body parts, all of a sudden you don't always pick it up on the camera, because it's that's electronic, digital, and kind of 5 feet removed. But in person, I'll never forget these moments where all of a sudden their voice would crack for a minute, or they would wipe their eye like that for a second, and then they would they'd sort of steal up again and finish the sentence. But those were some of the most poignant moments for me to see that deep down, even the most devoted disciples of the Planned Parenthood sort of agenda and message, the most devoted practitioners of Planned Parenthood's abortion business, they didn't have total faith in what they were doing, and there was a conflict that could be surfaced for them just by talking honestly about what they were doing, even when they thought they were talking honestly with people who were who were part of their industry and on exactly the same page. And so I think that's in part why, you know, the rage has been so extreme from Planned Parenthood and their allies and the people who work for them, because these videos really hold up a mirror to them and say, look, is this really who you want to be?
Yes.
And I say that to the entire country. Is this really who you want to be? Where you can have late-term abortion, any reason, have the baby stay alive while it's being delivered intact, and then vivisect it to kill it and harvest the organs afterwards. Is that really where we want to be as a civilization?
As Ben Shapiro says, we'll look back in whatever 50 years, he says, and think, God, we killed babies. How could that even be possible?
Yeah.
I have another question I want. Right. And I'm kind of a little bit all over the place here, but I just, at the same time, I you know, one of these days, David, we are going to make a movie about you, because I do think it's the most extraordinary movie, by the way.
I'll try and get a good ending here for everybody before the.
I was very disappointed. You know, I was looking forward to the J'accuse moment.
It will be. It'll happen. It will happen.
David being carried out of the San Francisco courtroom.
It will happen.
High, but
it will happen. And it will happen. But when I think of that movie, I think of the scene, you know, because when David's home was raided by the authorities here in California
by presidential candidate Kamala Harris,
under her orders, you know, this
armed raid,
an armed raid, you know,
11 DOJ agents.
This is David here. Do you think he's physically, you know, superimposing?
It was 11 DOJ agents.
It was 11 California DOJ agents. They had assault rifles and everything. They had bomb sniffing dogs.
But again and again, you know, and
what were they looking for? They took all your tips.
They wanted to take all his stuff. Don't ruin my story, Phelim. Don't ruin our story here. So basically, they come to raid David's place, and I think you were putting out the trash, right?
I was putting out the trash.
He's putting out the trash, right? The whole lot, these guys all arrive, right? And then David sort of, you know, you kind of walk them back up, right? And they go in and they start picking up all his stuff. They start picking up his laptops and stuff. And you correct me if I'm getting this wrong. And David gets on his phone to talk to his lawyer to find out, like, what do I do in this situation? And I just love this. I just love this story. So they go in, right, to David's place, right, to this obvious, like, dangerous criminal we got with us today, you know? Rico, that's right, yeah. They go in there and, you know, and they're all super aggressive and they're lifting all his stuff and looking for hard drives and stuff, because David has his stuff stored on hard drives. And I just remember we were on a flight just shortly after that, and David said to me, God, the hard drives. He was traveling with them. But so we're there, so he's there in the apartment, and suddenly one of the guys, you know, was like, one of the police officers, one of the enforcement officers was a Hispanic gentleman. And, you know, without sounding far too cliched here, probably, you know, a Catholic, right? And he sort of suddenly, in the rush and all of that, stops, sees David on the phone and kind of takes in the room a bit, right? Do you want to take it from there? Because I just love this story. Sure.
So there's 11 California DOJ agents, right, stomping through my little one-bedroom apartment and, you know, walking in and out of the back patio. And there wasn't even room in the apartment for all 11 of them. So like 4 or 5 of them are lined up outside with their rifles and everything, and the neighbors are wondering what's going on. And so the 6 or so agents who are in the apartment are like rummaging behind a statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe and around all the different icons I have and everything. And one of them, you know, there was on my desk, there was a picture of St. Michael the Archangel that Lila Rose had gotten for me actually many years ago. And the agent turns around, he looks at me, he says, you know, I have that same picture in my wallet.
And I think my memory of it, or at least, of course, I'm probably making this more cinematic as I go on, but I don't think you could possibly make it any more cinematic.
He looked guilty. He had the Catholic guilt for sure on his face when he said that.
Okay, I'm on the wrong side of this deal here, you know. Yeah. And he basically sort of said, I thought he kind of said to you, you can keep the phone, right? And I think you were able to keep your phone. Right? They were trying to take away my phone that I was using to talk to my lawyers while they were raiding my home. Sure. So yes, they didn't end up taking that. They took a different phone. Yeah. And I want to kind of step back a bit, and we're going to notice here that on this table, by the way, it's quite funny, because I've been threatening every podcast for like the last 3 that I'm going to make an Irish coffee, and we're going to try and attempt to do that today. And David and I have always enjoyed an alcoholic beverage, so we might enjoy an alcoholic beverage during the podcast. What I'd like to do just now is to go right back, you know, I mean, right now I look at you, David. Now, to me, you're still a very young person.
Who needs a haircut?
I love the hair.
Yeah.
I'm all into the no.
I told
like
them it's
this
casual.
look.
I've been sitting in a courtroom for 6 weeks at this point. I'm exhausted. I said there's going to be no gel, no product. And this is a casual podcast. Casual.
I like the hair. I think the hair has got a very
casual. And
it's a romantic look there. But you look to me, right now I look at you and I think you're really young. But you're old in this movement, and you have been. This story is very.
That was something. That was one of the key notes that the prosecution had against you. But basically, remember they introduced you at the beginning. Never really had a proper job. And spent his life in the pro-life movement. Yeah. And this was some kind of
that was meant to be a bad thing.
Bad person.
But go right back, David. How did this all start for you? And I just think people will be really interested to hear that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so I grew up in a not super activist or even particularly Catholic home or anything like that. I am the child of a crisis pregnancy. That's always been part of my story, and it's always been part, sort of something that I was aware of growing up. And what that did for me is it communicated really powerfully a message that sometimes people are going to come into the world in less than totally perfect or planned or ideal circumstances, but at the end of the day, now is always a good time to welcome a new little person into the human family. And there's nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing shameful about that. And that just sort of growing up with that kind of foundational understanding, and then encountering in either late junior high school or high school, just the sort of the debate about abortion policy in our country, I just instinctually had this sense, well, that can't be right. We should be welcoming people in the world when they haven't done anything wrong. And that argument was not enough to convince all of the very secular progressive friends that I had growing up in Davis, California, and sort of the Berkeley of the Central Valley. So being That's who I am, I went and did. I went and started doing research, and I found out, when I was 15, that there was over 1 million abortions a year in our country at that time, and I also saw pictures of how abortion kills a little human being, and I was so struck by those images and by that data, because it meant that, number one, it's not rhetorical exaggeration to say that abortion kills a baby. Abortion kills a baby in the most graphic and brutal way that you could imagine. And this isn't just something that happens once in a blue moon or in very rare circumstances. This is being done on an industrial scale in our country, and on a scale that is like any great injustice from the past that people look back on 50 years from now, 100 years from now, and people look back on it and they say, oh my gosh, how could people have been like that? How could people have treated each other that way? And growing up again in Davis, California, in the Northern California public school system, my kindergarten teacher sat us down when I was in kindergarten. She was African American, and she sat us down when we were kindergartners and taught us about the history of slavery in the United States, but also about the Underground Railroad and Harriet Tubman. And I just and that that affected me. I always felt that that of course, if we have the clarity to recognize how bad something was so many years ago, I think we all want to be the sort of person who would say, if I had lived at that time, I would have been different, right? I would have seen clearly through the fog of the culture of what was going on. I would have seen clearly what was going on. I would have been one of the people who was different, who stood up and said,
and you are,
you can't treat people that way.
Exactly who you are.
You can't treat people that way.
Yeah. That's exactly who you are.
So I try to be, I try my best, and I'm not perfect.
It's incredible what you've done. It's an extraordinary achievement. It's just, it's extraordinary. And then you initially worked with Lila Rose, is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, Lila and I actually met in high school. We've known each other since longer than anybody else in the movement has known of us or known of us as something important. But so Lila's group, Live Action, and we were just at this lovely gala dinner that they had on Saturday night over the weekend.
Pleasant.
And it was a real blast from the past. Back at that time, Live Action was just like a little sort of local educational youth group kind of thing. But that was my first sort of introduction to the formal world of of pro-life advocacy. And so then later on, very quickly, I hired on as director of research at Live Action to help develop the first big multi-state undercover audit of Planned Parenthood that they did.
What age were you then?
And I would have been 19.
Yeah, it's basically 12.
I was 19. That was the
Yes.
summer of 2008. I was 19 years old. I did all the legal and background research for the Mona Lisa project that I think everybody is still really proud of. And that sort of launched a kind of a new genre of doing pro-life investigative reporting. And I really enjoyed it. It seemed like I was pretty good at it. So I worked with them from 2008 to 2013. And then in 2013, I had become so convicted by the baby body parts issue. I really felt that this deserved to have a very in-depth, long-term undercover expose done on it. It needed to have a very specific full-time focus.
The question I have is, fast forward to the baby parts investigation. When you started, did you ever think that you were going to get what you got get access so easily? Which is actually part of the court case. The Planned Parenthood security protocols were ludicrous. They didn't even Google you. They did not Google you. This came out in court that if they had Googled you,
did it find you out?
Your false identity and the company, they would have seen there was an obviously fake company or not appropriate and set off a series of red flags. There are emails among Planned Parenthood saying, "Why didn't we Google this person?" So, what did you think you were going to get, and did you think you were going to get as much? When you started, back when you were writing the proposal document?
Yeah, I never could have imagined that we were going to get the kind of invitations into the inner sanctum of Planned Parenthood and the top levels of the abortion industry as quickly as we did. You hear anyone who's either read a couple of any of the filings in these different cases that Planned Parenthood and the National Abortion Federation has against me, or anyone who's sat for one day in the courtroom will know that they act like this is these top secret spaces, almost like a SCIF, briefing room for national security information or something. They talk about, the National Abortion Federation especially is like the gold standard of the inner sanctum, super secret. Nobody gets in without, aborting 5 fetuses beforehand, and then, with the secret handshake and everything, not to be too, not to be irreverent. But in reality, we signed the very first abortion industry trade show that we went to undercover. We signed up the investigators on the internet. It was publicly advertised, no screening, no vetting, no identification, just pay the fee and sign up. And then while they were attending that meeting in Denver, Colorado in September 2013, there were trade show representatives from the National Abortion Federation who were there. They met them at an evening wine reception, and the NAF people said, "Oh, you have a new startup that this scenario of a startup company. It wasn't even formed yet fully. We told them, we're just starting it up right now, and they said, "Oh, that's great. You should join our group purchasing program. We think that our membership would be really interested in this opportunity to sell fetal body parts to you. Join our group purchasing program. Do it through that. Come to our." They didn't say top secret meeting. They said, "Come to our meeting we're going to have in San Francisco in April in 2014. Talk to these people." Zero vetting, zero screening, and so then the NAF people have finally admitted under oath that they let our people in, our Biomax company in, because they thought that we were, quote, pre-approved, because these trade show reps had met us at this other meeting that was advertised to the public and anybody could show up off the street. So so there you go. That's their Planned Parenthood's entire case on a technical level is based on this idea that they feel entitled to zero scrutiny, zero transparency, absolute privacy and confidentiality, without ever having taken any normal steps to create that kind of private space.
Exactly, actually. That is correct. It's bad enough that they think they're entitled to zero scrutiny, and it's bad enough that the judge said they're entitled to zero scrutiny, that the First Amendment does not apply to this. But then they don't make any effort to have zero scrutiny. If there was a serious hacker or state entity that wanted to get into their files, I imagine that would be no problem as well. They should be taken up for complete lack of security protocols.
I mean, in reality, Planned Parenthood should be suing the National Abortion Federation for $2.3 million for the fraud that NAF perpetrated against everybody else in the abortion industry, promising them, making them rely on the idea that NAF had such a airtight skiff level security in this place, when in reality it was open to anybody who they thought might have something interesting to say to them.
People should go and look at the videos actually that you did.
David's videos.
Are they on the CMP website?
Yes.
What's that website? CMP.
Sorry, which videos are we talking?
The ones you did.
Your undercover videos.
Yes, the undercover videos are on the CMP website.
Yes, let's hear David tell us where to find them.
Sure. If you go to centerformedicalprogress.org or cmp.org, you can find all of the undercover footage that's been released over the past several years.
I want to say something. Never, not once during the court case, did Planned Parenthood say that there was anything inaccurate or badly edited or misleadingly edited in the whole video.
In the whole thing. And the other thing that I think is very interesting is that they didn't sue you for libel,
slander, or
defamation, because actually, because what you revealed about what they were like is the truth. You know. So
in fact,
this is going to be.
They sued you because you told the truth. Actually.
Oh no, 100%. That's exactly the reason. So we're going to do this extremely quick segue now into food, and let David have a little relax there for a moment. So we're going to do something we've never done before. We're going to try an attempt to make Irish coffee here on the table. You'll notice we got rid of, and by the way, from a health and safety point of view, we got rid of the cats for this particular moment. So, but I had actually asked David, because we ask all of our guests, and he can take a moment to try and work this out as I try and work this out. We ask every guest if they had to, by the way, this is cream, and this is a very simple way of making cream thicker that we learned from our friend Magella. My sister's in the room right now and she'll remember that. This is Magella's idea. Magella, who's a doctor, by the way. This is a great way
she would know how to make cream.
She'd know how to make cream. She knew how to do a lot of stuff now, I'll tell you. Magella knows a lot about things. But anyway, so I'm doing this, and you do it not too long, because if you do it too long, it turns into butter. And the plan is to have it so that it's it'll pour thickly and stay on the top. Now, David, so the questions that we always ask our audience, our guests are, number one, we ask people are you famous for a dish? And I know we've talked a lot about food in the past. Are you famous for a dish? And if you had to impress someone, what would you cook for them? Number one. And then the second thing we segue into is a piece of art that you'd like to share with us, something like a movie, a poem, a piece of sculpture that is important to you. So start with the thing, and I'm going to start trying to make this coffee. Start with your recipe.
Sure. So I'm not famous for any particular recipe or dish, although if I were, or if I had to impress somebody with it, it would probably be my Sicilian grandmother's pasta and meatballs. We have
meatballs.
Meatballs. I think we have a challenge on our hands. My meatballs are pretty incredible.
The meatball challenge.
What did now I meant to, by the way, and I would advise people to bring a measure for measuring whiskey, because otherwise
we have a measure. That is
that's too much, is it?
That is.
Do you know what? We'll have a nice strong one. I mean, the whole room can have a taste of it.
After the trial we just sat through, are you kidding?
Yeah, exactly.
I should go and get the measure. The measure's out there, but I don't know.
It's fine. So let's just. Do you think there's 2 shots in it? Okay, Yvonne is very unimpressed with this now. All right, Yvonne. God, listen, young ones.
Everyone's an expert these days.
Everyone knows.
Everyone's a critic.
It's very little. No, guys, sorry. All right, okay.
Why is there only 2 of them?
I blame TripAdvisor.
I don't know. I forgot to bring more glasses, but we're going to have a taste test here. What did your grandmother put in, or does your grandmother put in to her meatballs? Because I have a very impressive meatball recipe myself.
Sure. So I won't reveal all of the secrets. This is,
but maybe
the next time I'm on the podcast, we'll do more. But one of the key, I think one of the foundational parts of it is we have a very sort of old and fruitful oregano plant that has been in the family for quite some time. I actually transplanted it down to Southern California from her home in Northern California. I can give clippings of it.
Never ask a man for his clippings.
So so we grow it on our own in the backyard, and that is one of the core seasonings that goes into the meatballs. So
and then
real fresh Italian oregano.
That's not thick enough yet.
It's a combination of ground beef and sweet or mild Italian sausage.
Oh, do you know what? I think that's the trick. I've recently started using sausage, and I think And you use sweet sausage. I use the sweeter. No, hang on. So this is Phelim. No.
This should be a bigger spoon as well.
All right. Okay.
It should be a bigger spoon. No.
Oh, I don't think that's thick enough. let's see. This is the idea. Oh God.
Wow.
No. Hang on. Stop, everyone. Stop now. Stop. Can the people who are out there, Magda, Jackie, Yvonne? Looks pretty good. Thank you.
Can we get a close up on the Irish coffee?
Can we get? Let's hang on now. Hang on. I don't think this is at all tragic. By the way, Jackie, what do you think? Perfect. All right, David gets to go first. Go, David.
Oh wow.
Go, David.
This is not like an Irish car bomb where I have to chug the whole thing.
No, you do this awfully gently.
Some people might find the word Irish car bomb offensive.
I am sorry.
How did you taste that?
This is great. This is excellent.
Well done, David. Okay, moving right along.
This is good.
Other people in the room, Yvonne, you want to take a taste there. The next question to David then is the piece of art, and we've always enjoyed asking our guests for the piece of art because I just think people love to get introduced to something that they haven't heard before, like a poem or a piece of music. What would it be for you, David? That's something.
Sure. So
you love?
I'm actually, as of 2019, I'm sort of on a theater kick right now.
Oh, right.
Which is I don't know if I'm sort of like becoming a 10-year-old again or something. I don't know, but so I saw the most incredible play over the summer. It was at the Long Beach Playhouse. One of my good friends was in one of the leading roles. It's by a Puerto Rican playwright, and it's called Water by the Spoonful. And it's just an incredibly relevant, modern play about family dynamics and how we connect in the postmodern world, both in person and also over the internet. And it's just really smart and really deep and really good, and lots of thoughts about virtue and other things. So
what's the name of it again? Tell us.
It's called Water by the Spoonful.
Yeah.
It's an amazing title as well.
Okay.
Actually, it's gorgeous.
Very good.
Okay, I'm now going to attempt to make the second one of these. I've given the cream a little bit more of. I don't know this. We'll just see now. Okay. This, by the way, I'm not terribly upset looking about that cream. Now, I've done a little bit more of the shaking. Again, be careful you don't end up turning it into butter. And is this one a little bit thicker? Do you see? Do it over the back of the spoon.
I think the spoon should have been wider.
I don't think so, Phelim. Okay, now let's look now. Do you know what? Does everyone think that one's slightly better for being slightly thicker?
Yes.
So I'm going to totally have a little go of this. David.
Cheers.
God save all here. God save you. It's so nice to
Thank
have you
you.
here.
I
We
need
really loved meeting you. What a wonderful young person you are, and inspiring. And by the way, I always, when I speak to pro-life groups around the country, and any groups, I always say that you deserve the highest honor that the country could ever give a person for what you did. It's so brave and courageous, and people aren't courageous in this world, and you are, and you're just great.
Thank you, David. I mean, how do you think this is going to end? I mean, Planned Parenthood committed crimes. Shouldn't they be charged?
They should.
Delicious.
They should. And there is there's still an ongoing FBI and U.S. Department of Justice federal investigation based on the criminal referrals from the two congressional investigations, the Senate Judiciary Committee and the House Select Investigative Panel. And the evidence is only continuing to pile up. The longer that Planned Parenthood wants to try to persecute pro-life investigative reporters through the court system, we're bringing Planned Parenthood's top-level people into the courtroom under oath. They're swearing an oath to tell the truth, and they're admitting that the videos are true, that they sell human fetal body parts on a quid pro quo basis, that they change the way they do their procedures in order to get more intact, marketable body parts for sale, including using illegal partial birth abortion methods. Some of the harvesting companies are admitting that sometimes they just get intact fetuses delivered right there in the clinic for organ harvesting, which sounds an awful lot like vivisection, like infanticide through vivisection. And then the documents and the emails and the contracts and,
of course
the invoices.
And
piling
the
up.
invoices. I thought for us, I think the invoices was extraordinary. Where you have these invoices.
We'll put some of them up. Actually,
we'll put some of them up there. Where you have, an invoice, a line item saying the skin of a 4-month-old Down syndrome child, and they have a line item price with that.
Plus packaging,
plus packaging and posting and return of whatever in 30 days, exactly like you would if it was shoes or nails. And those are a list. And it's very shocking.
And they claim that it's all just reimbursement for shipping costs. Well, if you want to buy both of the eyeballs of the baby that was just aborted, you're going to pay a double specimen price, one for each each eyeball, even though they're going to put them in the same little package and ship them in the same FedEx shipment.
But you're facing criminal charges also, aren't you?
That's true. You can thank Kamala Harris for that. There are one of the charges was actually dismissed during the preliminary hearing back in September, so we're now down to 14 felony charges. Only 14 felonies, not 15. Yeah. We're waiting to find out what the result of the preliminary hearing is going to be. The final order on that is supposed to be announced on December 6th. As of now, and so we'll find out. We hope that all of those charges will just get thrown out, because the Attorney General's office didn't even put on a case really at the preliminary hearing. Much of our entire affirmative defense and then all of our basic statutory offenses are completely unrebutted by the Attorney General's office. The prosecutor even stood up in the middle of the courtroom and said that she did not know any definition of confidentiality for a confidential conversation under the California video recording law, which is, by the way, the core provision of the California video recording law, whether it's a permitted taping or not a permitted taping. So we'll see. Hopefully, there will be some justice still left in California. It'll be thrown out. Perhaps, there's many different ways the decision tree could go. So we'll see what happens on December 6th.
Well, that's
okay. So we're gonna thank you so much, David, again for being here. Really appreciate it, and we will, I think, definitely have David back on again. And we need to talk more about the meatballs as well, I think. But this has been great, and we just wish you the very, very best. And I certainly have no doubt that you will be vindicated and that you will come out triumphant, even out of the Ninth Circuit court where they'll get to rediscover
this
justice.
is going to go to the Supreme Court.
I hope it goes to the Supreme Court.
It needs to.
I mean, Planned Parenthood had better hope that there's not a mistrial, declared or found or something. We go back for another trial, because then we're going to do this all over again. We're going to bring in all the top level abortion people again, put them under oath.
Have a better judge this time, and a judge that, by the way, has
a judge that allows in the evidence. Okay,
I hope
we could
so.
keep talking for about 2 hours here. So we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. This is Ann McElhenney and Phelim McAleer of the Ann and Phelim Scoop, saying goodbye to our lovely guest, David Daleiden.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.